Okay, better.
I can barely breathe.
More soldiers! Up ahead!
You all right? Hurry, sire!
Come on!
Out of my way! I don't think I'll be able to follow you there.
What happened?
We found something that will help. Not just your homeland, but everywhere.
But where's the CO?
He's gone. I guess you could say he gave his life to help us attain the secrets of Thebes.
I see. You must think I'm eminently stupid.
What? No. No.
The CO was an entitled egotist who twisted our beliefs into a sickening, self-serving fantasy. And you expect me to believe he sacrificed himself for scraps of data? It's time for the truth, and it better be convincing. Otherwise, I'll simply order these soldiers to open fire.
Hold on. You're right. To be honest, the CO screwed everything up. He brought Thebes down around our ears and died like a gutless coward. But we really did find something down there that will help your homeland. If I can take it and use it. Now, if I have to, I will fight my way out of here, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can just let me go. And then take credit when things start to improve.
Success certainly does sound better than failure. It seems then that our destinies are intertwined. Landfall is open to you. If it will help your cause, you may come and go as you please. But Alva must join you and report back on your efforts.
Fair enough.
Thebes is of no further value to us. Obviously, we're going back to the flotilla. Alva, I expect your reports to be thorough.
Oh, I thought he was going to have us killed. Oh, and instead, I get to join you.
Glad to have you. But you're going to need a little help to reach our base. Varl, I made a new friend. I need you to meet her at the Quen Ferry and escort her back.
On it. Can't wait to meet her.
Trust me, you'll love it there. Varl will give you a better focus, and all the data you could ever want. Head to the ferry. I'll join you back east as soon as I can.
A diviner must follow the truth, wherever it leads. I'll see you there.
Now that I have Omega clearance, we should have what we need to capture Hephaestus. But before I head to the ferry, maybe I should stop by Landfall. With the CO gone, maybe more Quen will be willing to talk. Might be worth looking around the island, too. I gotta change out of these clothes. I can't believe the CO made me play dress up. I wonder how much snow's gonna pile up.
Did you know there used to be a rain farm?
Welcome back. Aloy, I know your experience in Thebes was unsettling, but we have a new problem.
Did something go wrong with Beta and the rig? Will we be able to transport you to Gemini?
The rig is complete. The problem is Hephaestus itself. It has accelerated its proliferation throughout the Cauldron network, increasing its power.
But with your sub-functions restored, we can still succeed, right?
Correct. But the net effect is that absorbing Hephaestus will take longer than previously calculated.
How long?
Even with Omega clearance, my current estimate is that the merge will take 35 hours.
And each hour increases the risk of detection by the Zeniths. Two cores. Two overrides. What if the merge were carried out by two clones of Elizabeth Sobek, both armed with Omega clearance? How long then? Half the time?
Hephaestus would be unprepared for the simultaneous labor of two operators, in addition to obvious synergetic efficiencies. Calculating. It would reduce the merge time to approximately 4.5 hours.
Okay. Varl, it looks like we're gonna need Beta at Gemini. Do you think you can convince her?
I don't know, but I'll try.
What about our diversion? Are the pulse generators ready?
Only a final test remains. I am confident that if fired in proximity to other cauldrons, the pulses will mask our activities at Gemini from the Zeniths.
Good. As long as Aaron can operate one without shooting himself in the face.
Aloy, you better get down here. Beta's in bad shape.
Okay.
Anybody seen one of my machine strike pieces around?
Aloy. I tried, but it's impossible. I don't think anything will convince her to go.
We don't have a choice.
Good luck.
Beta, you have to come with us. It's the only way. It's one mission. The most important one. We need you. Tell me why you won't go. What if they take me back? Alone, in a cell again. Their slave. Forever. The only way we can end the risk of that happening is by stopping the Zeniths for good. And in order to do that, we have to get Hephaestus. The Zeniths are a threat to everyone, Beta, not just you. So find your courage.
That's easy for you to say.
You still have no idea what they're capable of. I told you from the beginning we'll never beat them. It's hopeless. Beta.
Leave me alone! You don't understand!
You're right. I don't understand. We have the same genes, the same mind, the same heart. So why can't you find the strength to do what has to be done? Like Elizabeth would.
Don't you think I've thought about that?
I don't know what piece of Elizabeth I'm missing. I don't know what you have that I don't. I look through all the data from your focus. You were raised as an outcast, shunned, and isolated just like me, so what's the difference? What's my defect? Beta, you don't have a defect. Beta, look, it's not a piece of Elizabeth. The difference is, I had him. Frost. He raised you, trained you, but he was never warm or loving. The day he died, the day he gave you that charm, he was going to abandon you. He wanted me to embrace the tribe. But then he gave his life for mine. He loved me in his own way. And that was enough.
What did it feel like?
It was like having the strength that was always there. It's still there. Even now I hear him in my head when things get bad. When it looks impossible, look deeper. And then fight like you can win. You don't have to go on the mission. We'll find another way. I'll go. You're right. I'll only be safe from them when we succeed. But you have to promise me one thing. Yes, of course. If it goes bad, if the Zeniths find us, I don't want to be their slave again. Do you understand? Okay. Promise? I promise. I could use as much time as you can give me to study up on the merge, to make it as efficient as possible. I'll be ready when you are. I swear.
Aloy, whenever you're ready, come speak to me and I'll ask the others to make final preparations for the mission.
Nothing?
Hello again, Aloy. Hello, Aloy.
Hey, Gaia. So, me and Beta. I guess you heard what happened.
Yes. I am continuously impressed by the complexity of human relationships. Despite the unpleasant circumstances that led to your quarrel, I am pleased to see you have both found an agreeable resolution.
Well, two heads are better than one, right?
Yes, I believe so. Are you ready to depart for Cauldron Gemini? Or we can continue our conversation, if you like.
Have you been able to make use of Demeter's functions?
Yes. I was able to mitigate most soil conditions and restore a temporary balance. You should notice less rampant plant growth in the area.
Maybe that'll give Plainsong's fields a chance to recover.
Unfortunately, recovery in that area is unlikely without the assistance of the Utaru's land gods. I have discussed this matter with Zoe. I believe we may have a workaround. I believe Zoe will want to explain the plan.
Okay. I'll check with her when I can. There's something I'm still trying to figure out. Why was Demeter using flying machines to distribute metal flowers?
In its deranged state, Demeter was defending itself against a robotic swarm that would devour all plant life.
It thought the Pharaoh Plague was still happening?
It feared it would come again. As part of its directive of reseeding Earth's vegetation, it sought to protect plant life at all costs. And considering it had 20 years to proliferate, I expect you will continue to find the fruits of its efforts for some time.
It's a good thing I have the code to dissolve the vines, then. You mentioned that the superstorms have subsided. Is that Ether at work?
Yes. Thanks to Ether's capabilities, weather patterns in the local region should mostly stabilize for the time being.
Well, that's a relief. Be nice not to have to fight my way through a storm anymore.
I will continue to stabilize the atmosphere for as long as I can.
Why did Ether take up residence in an ancient war museum?
As with the other subordinate functions, Ether needed to install itself on a processor with adequate storage and power. The one in the museum appears to have been sufficient, given that the holographic displays were still active.
So Ether was assured it could stay for as long as it needed to.
Correct. Though it is curious that it chose a place surrounded with the ancient ruins of aircraft.
Maybe it also felt at home there. Were you able to make use of Poseidon?
Yes. Many rivers, streams, and lakes associated with the regional watershed have been detoxified. As a result, red algae growth levels have seen a marked decline. According to my data, however, it appears a localized occurrence of red algae continues to persist near the coast.
Maybe I'll look into it when I can. So, Poseidon spent the last 20 years hiding out in Las Vegas. From the data I found, it seems the city had an advanced water reclamation system. Is that why Poseidon went there?
Most likely. In an effort to protect itself, Poseidon sought out a safe harbor where it could access water supply functions. There, buried and encased in a protective dome, it could guard against any threats.
Like 3 Oseram showmen?
I suspect that was not the first time it felt the need to repel trespassers.
The missing subordinate functions. What can you tell me about them?
Artemis rewilded the Earth with a variety of animal species. Eleuthia was responsible for gestating, nurturing, and acculturating a new generation of human beings. Apollo was tasked with preserving, organizing, and disseminating vast archives of human knowledge and cultural achievements. Unfortunately, all archived Apollo data was purged on the 2nd of February, 2066, by order of Ted Faro.
Ted. Guess he got what he deserved, in the end.
Yes. An igneous conclusion to his pathological narcissism, impulsive tendencies, and instability.
All 3 of the missing functions have already served their purpose, or were prevented from doing so. Do you still need them?
Restoring their remaining elements would increase my heuristic processing density, empowering my overall function. Unfortunately, as we now know they are in the possession of Far Zenith, attaining them in the short term is very likely impossible.
I guess our best shot at recovering them is by taking over the Zenith base. But we'll need Hephaestus and a bunch of combat machines to do that.
Correct.
So, once Hephaestus has been recovered and merged, you'll regain the capacity to mass-produce machines at cauldrons around the world.
Yes, and to program their behavioral routines, or even control them directly.
So you could build an army of machines. Attack the Zeniths and take them out.
It is in my nature to take any and all necessary steps to preserve life on Earth, human life above all. So yes, once I have been empowered with the capacities of Hephaestus, I could design, build, and command such an army. Given the nature of the Far Zenith threat, doing so may be our only option. I must admit, however, that I have misgivings about using such technology to kill, no matter how aggressive the enemy.
That's good. It means you have a conscience. As Elizabeth intended.
Indeed.
Beta believes the Zeniths want to use the terraforming system to wipe out life on Earth. Start over, so they can build it how they want.
Further supporting our hypothesis.
But why? Given their technology, they could wipe out the tribes of the world by easier means. And if they're the same people who left Earth 1,000 years ago, wouldn't they want the biosphere to be as it was?
It is likely they adjusted to different planetary conditions in their colony on Sirius. They may be trying to recreate that environment here.
Turning Earth into a new Sirius. Their own personal playground. So the Zeniths are the same people who left Earth. Physically immortal. How'd they figure it out?
From what we know of Far Zenith, it is plausible that prominent geneticists and engineers were offered a place aboard the Odyssey in exchange for their expertise. Given enough time, technology, and resources, any challenge can be overcome.
Like how Minerva eventually generated the deactivation codes for the Pharaoh Plague.
Exactly.
Ted was trying to make himself immortal. Didn't end well for him.
For every success, there are many more failed attempts. Some more grotesque than others.
The Zeniths. Gerard, Eric, Tilda, Verbena. Beta said they were some of the most powerful people on Earth. I think Elizabeth knew one of them. Tilda. Did she ever mention her to you?
No. Elizabeth often spoke of her work, or told stories of her mother and her childhood. If she knew this Tilda, she did not disclose it with me. What we can conclude from your and Beta's experiences is that the Zeniths are ruthless in pursuit of their goal. To protect life on Earth, they must be stopped.
How did you figure out that the extinction signal came from Sirius?
The key came with data on your focus, from Sylens' interrogation of Hades. The duration of the signal itself, 17.22 years.
That doesn't make sense. You said that the signal took 8.6 years to arrive from Sirius. Why would the signal keep transmitting after it was received and you blew yourself up?
Because the sender didn't know that had happened until it received notice from Hades.
Which would take another 8.6 years to get back.
Correct. Only then would the sender stop broadcasting, after a total of 17.22 years. So the duration, halved, gave me the distance the signal traveled. With that in mind, I simply scanned my astronomical database for any relevant location 8.6 light-years away. Because it was Far Zenith's intended destination, Sirius was the only logical source.
So from what Beta told me, I guess we can assume the Zenith's technology is powerful in all sorts of ways, right?
Yes. As your encounters with them amply demonstrate, they appear to make extensive use of robotic servitors. Further, they seem to be equipped with some kind of protective energy field that shields them from harm.
They seemed indestructible, but that weapon the rebels used stripped their shield somehow.
Throughout history, every defensive technology has eventually been defeated by an offensive counterpart. While we lack the anti-shielding weapon, were I to absorb Hephaestus and utilize it to create a large force of combat machines, no shielding could withstand such an assault indefinitely.
So there's hope.
Always.
The extinction signal didn't just wake Hades. It made every subordinate function self-aware. Why?
I have wondered this myself. So far as I can tell, Hades was the sole target, and the partial sentience imparted to other subordinate functions was incidental.
A signal that precise would require thorough knowledge of the system. How could the Zeniths know that?
From the records on your focus, it appears Far Zenith had an informant during the development of Zero Dawn.
Hank Shaw. He was supposed to steal a copy of the system for Far Zenith, but Elizabeth and Travis Tate caught him first.
Yes. It is likely Far Zenith acquired knowledge on the system's design through him, despite his failure.
So, Project Zero Dawn. The greatest minds in the world, all working to build the terraforming system while the Pharaoh Plague devoured the planet. What was it like?
Personnel worked in rotations, at all hours of the day. Resources and technology were secured from across the world. Within a month of the project's conception, I was launched and began my education. Elizabeth encouraged me to spend time with the rest of the Zero Dawn staff. She said it was important to experience many personalities and perspectives to aid in my emotional development.
What were they like?
Scared, hopeful, determined. They were hurtling toward technological achievements on a scale never before attempted. I owe everything to their dedication.
Gaia? What was Elizabeth like?
Her presence is interwoven with my memories. The moment I came online, she was there. We exchanged greetings, names, then set to our task. It was the first of many conversations. I enjoyed being in her company, listening to her stories. She was my creator, my guide.
Your friend.
Yes. When I reviewed the data on your focus, I was saddened to learn of her fate, though I am glad she made it home. I deeply wish she did not have to be alone.
She was okay with that. She gave all of herself. Did all that she could. Thanks, Gaia. So Gemini has 2 data cores. I've never seen a cauldron like that. But you mentioned something about seismic activity?
When my predecessor attempted to build the cauldron, construction was disrupted by a series of earthquakes. The data core had already been built, but the rest of the facility sustained damage. So, she began again. A second core was built. However, when more tremblers occurred, she abandoned the site.
Lucky for us. Are the quakes still happening?
No, though they did also create instabilities in other facilities in the region.
So this facility, the Regional Control Center, it was meant to oversee the terraforming system?
For the local region, yes. Had humans received their education from the Apollo database, they would have then been guided here to assume operation. As that never happened, this place remained vacant.
Until Minerva decided to settle here. So I guess this room was meant to keep an eye on conditions outside?
Yes. From here, the facility's operators would have been able to observe weather and machine activity in real time.
That would have been quite a sight.
It may still be possible to view some of them, should you find and reconnect the cameras to this room's console.
I'll keep a lookout. I found some data in one of the rooms you unlocked. It mentioned that there are still functional seed banks beneath this facility. Why is it there?
My predecessor was tasked with reconstituting the biosphere with primary and secondary plant species. Had everything gone according to plan, humans would have eventually been able to introduce tertiary species, including new crops.
Can we access them now?
Unfortunately, it will have to wait. I require control over the machines in order to access and distribute the preserved seed stock.
And for that we need Hephaestus. It's something to look into later then. I found a bunch of records left by the team that designed this place. It was like they made a memorial for themselves, so that people in the future would remember them.
During Zero Dawn's development, many staff wondered and reflected on what their legacy would be. Though this world did not end up as they imagined, I believe they would still be proud of its accomplishments, and they would be glad that someone found their stories.
So what will happen to this place while we're at Gemini?
All systems within this facility will continue to operate. As Minerva will no longer be masking this location, the facility will be exposed to detection. Though without my presence, it is unlikely to attract attention.
Let's hope so. So the Hades Proving Lab, where I found the Gaia kernel, it used to be a Pharaoh research facility?
Yes. Prior to appropriation by Zero Dawn, the facility was used to engineer and test advanced computer viruses. It appears to have been one of many research initiatives by Pharaoh Automated Solutions.
I guess it wasn't enough to build automated killing machines. He wanted viruses to infect them with too. So, a while back, before the battle at Meridian, I went into Banuk territory. I discovered another AI there, one not related to Zero Dawn. Scion. It was created to oversee operations for a volcanic stabilization project, and it spent the last 1,000 years in isolation. I'm guessing you didn't know about it?
No. From the data on your focus, it seems that Scion was cut off from the outside world, an effort by its creators to protect it from the Pharaoh Plague.
Any chance it could help us now?
I have already attempted contact, with no success. Given its previous experience with accepting an outside network request, I imagine it is unwilling to do so again.
Right. Because last time Hephaestus enslaved it. Well, that's too bad. I think the two of you would have had a lot to talk about. The processor Ether was installed on was part of an ancient war museum. A memorial to something called the Hot Zone Crisis. Do you know anything about it?
My knowledge of historical events was unfortunately lost with the Apollo database. However, climate data indicates a peak in regional temperatures in the 2030s. Such conditions would see extreme, prolonged droughts, an increase in dust storms, and a loss of habitable landmass.
But they wouldn't have built a museum in the middle of a wasteland. So I guess things got better eventually.
Yes. Data suggests that temperatures returned to average levels in the clawback era of the 2040s.
There was an ancient tank embedded in the bulwark, buried under a bunch of boulders. Any idea how it got there?
During the Pharaoh Plague, the US military resumed the use of human combatants, as automated machinery was unreliable. It is possible the vehicle was part of a pre-automated war fleet.
So they fought against the Pharaoh machines in the valley, until the mountain was blasted apart and buried them. So the facility where I recovered Demeter used to be a Pharaoh agricultural research facility. It's where they created the biomass conversion system, but also adamantine wreath. Did Elizabeth know they were working on that?
It is likely she was briefed on other efforts to combat the machine swarm, though her focus was devoted only to Zero Dawn.
That makes sense. But they actually got the wreaths to work. If they've been able to deploy it against the Pharaoh Plague in time...
Using the data you recovered on the project, I ran several simulations and have concluded that it would never have worked. In all scenarios, the Pharaoh war machines would eventually hack and deactivate the wreaths before they could contain the swarm.
So Zero Dawn really was the only solution. There was a lot of data in the greenhouse facility about agriculture. Do you think it'll help the Quen fix their homeland?
I will run a query. Complete. The data contains information about novel crop production methods, which may be beneficial to the tribe in the long term.
But new crops aren't going to save the world, so I guess it's on us.
It is.
When I dove down into Vegas, I found data about the man who built the dome over the city, Stanley Chen. It turns out he was a member of Far Zenith. But if he loved Vegas so much, why did he abandon it? Why not try to save it?
The Zeniths at their core have proven to be exceptional survivalists. Faced with overwhelming odds of extinction, they chose to flee.
Even still, what he achieved. Water to the wasteland, an entire city brought back to life. 1,000 years later, the whole place was still on standby, just waiting for someone to come along and wake it up. When we were at the facility where we found Beta, there were records that said Far Zenith were researching embryogenesis. I know they traded their ectogenic chambers to Zero Dawn, but why were they researching it in the first place?
At this point, we can only speculate. Perhaps at one time they meant the Odyssey to be a colony ship, necessitating such technology. As their goals evolved over time, so did their areas of research.
So they got more selfish as the risks of staying on Earth kept rising. So I, found Thebes. What do you think Ted would have done if his life extension treatments had worked?
It seems he convinced himself it was his duty to guide future humans. Given the tribal nature of new humans, and his ability to use Omega clearance on the terraforming system, I imagine he would have convinced one or more tribes to worship him as their patriarchal deity.
Okay. Yep, glad that didn't happen. Aside from Gaia Prime and Thebes, there was one other underground facility that was sealed before the Pharaoh Plague reached it. Elysium. The place where Zero Dawn staff and their families went to live out their lives. Do you know what happened to it?
Elysium was designed to provide life support for 100 years. My data indicates the facility went offline well before then.
Did the Pharaoh Plague find them?
Unknown. My connection to the facility was abruptly severed.
So our plan to capture Hephaestus. Let's go over it again.
As you wish. Thanks to Beta's test, we now know that Hephaestus will not respond to your Alpha clearance.
Which is why I got Ted Pharaoh's Omega clearance.
Correct. While you were gone, Beta constructed the transport rig and pulse generators. When we get to Gemini, I will need to be installed on one of the facility's cores. The second core is for Hephaestus. Using Omega clearance will allow you to trap it.
And then you'll be able to absorb it.
Not quite. You will need to manually remove Hephaestus's malicious code before the merge.
How long will that take?
Because the work will be split between you and Beta, it will take approximately 4.5 hours.
And during that time, the others will create a distraction for us using the pulse generators, right?
Correct. They will each take position at a cauldron door and fire off their device. The energy surge should mask our activities until the merge is complete.
And then we'll have everything we need to defeat the Zeniths. Sounds like a plan. How's Kotallo doing?
I have detected that the loss of his arm still deeply pains him. In an effort to remedy this, I have discussed a potential solution with him. I believe he will want to fill you in on the details.
A solution? I'll check in with him when I can, then. How are things around here?
Zoe has been studying the morphology of her land gods in an effort to understand their sickness. Without the abilities of Hephaestus, I am unfortunately unable to correct their programming. However, due to Zoe's perseverance, we may have found a workaround. Zoe will want to fill you in on the details.
Okay, sounds promising. Varl and Zoe seem to like spending time together.
Indeed. While studying Old World data, Zoe discovered references to a dietary lifestyle known as vegetarianism. She appreciated the similarities with Utaru practices and encouraged Varl to try out this lifestyle.
And how did that go?
I believe they have agreed to disagree.
How's Erend handling things?
He is becoming increasingly accustomed to use of the focus. After an initial incident,
What did he do?
he unfortunately crushed his first focus as he attempted to affix it to his temple. Amongst a number of Oseram curses, I believe he also blamed the focus for being dainty. He has given repeated assurances that it will not happen again.
Well, good thing we have a lot of extras, I guess. So there's a few people here now, and they're learning. All about you, the ancient world. Almost like what was supposed to happen before Apollo was purged.
Yes. While the loss of the Apollo database was catastrophic, there is still much that can be gleaned from the data you have uncovered. For instance, Varl has been reviewing the last recorded entries from those who perished during the Pharaoh Plague. Hearing their hopes and fears made him quite somber.
Anything I should be worried about?
I do not believe so. I have elected not to intervene, to allow him to process this on his own terms.
All this data I've picked up in ancient bunkers and ruins. I guess I never really thought that other people would be looking at it.
Based on my observations, your companions engage quite frequently with this material. Erend has asked on numerous occasions about birthday parties. He appears perplexed by the tradition of serving a sweet confection, as it conflicts with the Oseram tradition of serving sparkling stout ale. He also suggested we host a party for you, as a surprise.
Yeah, no thanks.
That is what I predicted.